A full house today, and I want to thank you all for coming along. Fantastic turnout, particularly as it was a Cayley last night, and I can see a number of people here who are sort of joined for maybe a drink or two last night, so well done. Everyone being able to turn up from that. I'm Sandra White, MSP for Glasgow Kelvin, and thank you very much, Robin and others, for asking me to come along. I'm just going to say a very few words because we want more questions, that we can, get some ideas. I just think it's been said before, obviously, September the 18th, a referendum, but we're on a pathway to something absolutely fantastic, something new, like the Common Weal and other ideas. We have groups all over the country. I'm really looking forward to working with them. And I think my role as a parliamentarian is to take these ideas back and in some way, and I see some of our parliamentarians here today, I see Mike McKenzie, obviously rubbing his eyes from perhaps last night, I don't know, but as parliamentarians, our job, I believe, is to take the ideas that come from yourselves and the other groups throughout the country and see where we can put that into policy. I've had some very good meetings along with Robin and others in regards to the human rights issues. I would like to see, obviously, a written constitution is what we thought, and we will get it when we get independence, but I want to see the right to a home, a right to a job, things that actually matter to people that they're able to do, and we hopefully will be able to do that through the Scottish Parliament, through an independent Scotland. So that's all I'm going to say. I'll pass it on to Robin, and I'm sure he'll introduce himself, no introduction needed, and then the other ladies are going to speak as well. Thank you.
Right, folks, the first thing I want to say is I'm one of the 4% of the Scottish population who has not yet joined the SNP. So I'm just here as a fellow traveller. Well, we'll see. I've got to stay friends with those Greens as well. But first thing I want to say is the last 2 years have been comfortably the most exciting and the best of my life. This campaign was simply amazing, and I want to immediately pay tribute, not just to the SNP as a party, but to it seems like millions of you that I met everywhere, the local activists in the SNP. Not only the commitment that really won me over, but it was the amazing way that this entire movement put differences aside and worked across different groups with the Greens, with the Radical Independence campaign, with people who were no parties, people who had never been involved in politics again. It was absolutely inspiring, it was absolutely wonderful. I didn't know if the SNP could do it, and you could do it in spades. That ability to work across parties is what's going to give this movement the real control of Scotland in the coming years. If we can keep that going, and we can keep all talking to each other and working together, I don't see what the other side's got, because they all hate each other. So, what now and what are we doing? Well, the first thing to say is that Scotland might have voted not to be an independent country, but it appears to me that a hell of a lot of people are just going to crack on as if we voted yes. Throughout the campaign, something amazing emerged, because it turned out that the different groups and the different people, where they were coming from, people used to say quite a lot, it's a very diverse campaign with lots of different... Actually, that wasn't my experience. My experience was that the people that I spoke with in Business for Scotland wanted to do their business in a better society, where people were getting good wages, where their customers weren't starving, where they could work with people, where they could live in that good society, and where business was seen as something that contributed to their community, not just something that leached on their community. The Radical Independence campaign were so committed to this idea of making working class communities better, and places where work isn't working, make them better. Women for Independence, the SNP, the Greens, actually they were really talking about one thing, which was a country with better social and economic equality, a better environmental track record, better democracy, and a better engagement of its people. And we achieved it by doing what we did, which was go out and talk to them and involve them. And that's what we've got to keep going. Now, we all have incredible, and they're nice problems to solve, but they're problems. Because we've had this culture of politics in Britain for my entire life, where people join political parties to be instructed. You now put a leaflet out, and we'll phone you again in 6 months' time when you've got another leaflet to put out. This is small compared to what you dealt with, but in the 6 days after the referendum, we got 1,300 people contacted us with specific offers of help. I'm a web programmer, what can I do for you? I'm an architect, is there anything that I can do? We were not equipped for that. We were not ready to manage that amount of interest. God knows how you're managing 60,000 new members. But what we've got to do, and this is above all what we've got to do, is to make sure that whatever we do now involves that new energy. It can't just be a matter of people sitting in rooms listening to what's being done. It's got to be about people being in rooms talking about what it is that we're going to do and to shape things and to change things. Because I think there's something incredibly important for this political party now. I am sitting with some anticipation to the speech after dinner, which I think will be a crossroads in Scottish politics. I think we will find this is the moment when that desire for change in Scotland, that desire for a better and fairer society, is quite clearly one which is carried by the SNP and not by the Labour Party. Now, actually, I think this is something that's been happening for a period of time, but for a number of reasons, a lot of people out there had not quite connected the fact that the SNP were a solidly social democratic party with old impressions or what the media said, and I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think now people are going to realise that this is the party that people that want change come to, this and the Greens. These are the parties that people who want to see change come to. And so what I think is incredibly important for all of us is that we start to work out what did that change mean and what do we do next. Because if we want to get to independence, and I am not one shred less committed than I was before, if anything, like many people, I think possibly I'm even more committed since we got that no vote and I look at what's happening. Everything we said that was going to happen, yeah, and in bucket loads. So what I'm looking at now, I mean, it is... There's a defining moment. I was going to say there's a defining moment for this campaign for me. One key moment was when I talked to the CSEU, which was the shipbuilding trade unions. And that was probably the most hostile meeting that I did in the entire campaign. And they all sat there with absolute certainty that their only chance of keeping their jobs was to stay with the UK government and the Ministry of Defence. And when I opened when I flipped onto the website of the Scotsman the other morning and I had a look and it said, oh, but the jobs might not come. Yeah, we did a report on this, which actually didn't get any media coverage, in which John Ainsley, Scottish CDMD, pointed out that they just changed the rules in the military procurement documents to take out the commitment that all military spending would take place in the country, in the UK. We knew this before the referendum. It was quite clearly removed from procurement rules, but this was not discussed, it was not taken out into the public, and now we're seeing all of this coming. So I am every bit as committed, in fact more so. But what I think we have to do collectively now are two things. We have to change how people see politics. Now, I have taken to eating sugar puffs for breakfast. This is not particularly because I like them, far too sweet for my liking, but it's the only thing that I can find that prevents my teeth from grinding as I read the Scottish media each morning. Just to briefly pick on the Scotsman, which I don't actually think has been the worst. The other day I read a story about the Smith Commission submissions, and what they said was, Smith Commission's split between Devo Max and Devo Nano. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, I'll have a quick look. And I read down it, what it said was, once you take out all the pro-independence groups, Civic Scotland, the trade unions and others, all want Devo Max, and business organisations all want not Devo Max. To which I thought was, right, so what that story actually was if you take out the reactionary business organisations, there is 100% support for Devo Max. So the CBI and the Weir group between them managed to create unanimity and turn it into a split between Devo Max and Devo Nano. This is not what's actually happening in the world. We need something different. And what we've got is, and I'm really, really excited about this on a personal basis, so I've got something to read in the morning. We're now just a few weeks away from launching a full digital news service every morning. So we've got Angela Haggerty, who's the editor. Angela Haggerty is an editor, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what she thinks we're going to have in our morning news service. It's going to be called Common Space. It's also going to be linked to commentary and policy work and a social media site to help people organise. I won't talk about it too much, but all I want to say is I'm so excited about a different news. Just things like, not in the morning, me having to read about who bought shares in I don't know, Standard Life. I don't really care. But I really would be interested to find out about communities that have done really exciting things like, buying out a baker's and running as a cooperative. Now that's interesting to me, because that tells us something about communities, not just something about how the elite are living their lives. And if we get that kind of news, and we can get proper investigative work, and we can get away from the endless playground reporting of who said what about whom, I think it could be really exciting. So I'm looking forward to this. We're hoping it'll be early December. We'll launch for a couple of weeks and then launch for sure in the new year. But the other thing that, actually, we've got two people who are not here, so we've got a local groups unit as well. Many of you have started local Common Weal groups. We don't know what you want to do, and I love that. And this is the thing that I find really exciting about it. If people want to use Common Weal as an excuse for being active, just to use the name because they think there should be a food bank, or because they want to fight the closure of their local school, or because they want to get together with other people and do book readings. There's one group's doing a reading group where they're going to pick political books and read them and get people to come in and talk about, or whatever it is that people want to use. If it's a badge that helps them to organise and do that, and we can support a bit, we're delighted. So we've got a team that's dealing with local, Common Weal local. And we've also got our parliamentary lobbyist, who's one of those people who's a little bit delicate today. I had a big night last night. But we've got a full-time member of staff who's going to be in the Scottish Parliament every day, talking to politicians, gathering information and trying to get a broad, different agenda over. We're going to kick off with 3 key priorities for the next 12 months, which is land reform. And I really do want to say to the SNP, if you didn't hear in the campaign that you were just on, that independent side wanted real change in land ownership and access to land, you're making a mistake. You've got to do something much more radical than what has happened up until this point. The same in local democracy. It wasn't really fair, but the SNP was painted as a centralising government, to which I say I've never yet met a government that wasn't centralising. It's largely the officials that do it. But nevertheless, we are the most centralised democracy in the developed world, and it's not good enough. It was Michael Forsyth, it wasn't you, it was Michael Forsyth that made us the most centralised democracy in the modern world. But it's time to say this isn't good enough. And one area where we were weak was out in the campaign to say we don't want the independence, where it just means taking powers to Edinburgh and not beyond. And I agree with that. We need to get local democracy, and this movement should be making it a priority. So we send out the message very clearly that when we say we want a democracy, we actually mean it. So a parliament for the Isles if they want it, a rural parliament with powers if they want it, and a proper layer of local democracy so that people in their own communities can actually make decisions about the places that they live. It costs nothing. We can do it straight away. It will be a big ticket. So we will really be pushing that subject. And the idea of participatory politics is the other one. We've got to get new systems for helping people to make decisions. So we've got the Parliament unit and we've got the local unit as well. But I think fundamentally, what we have to do now is to show that when we said that Scotland could be different, it wasn't rhetorical. It wasn't a campaign trick. It was a commitment. It was a promise. It was an absolute intention. And I think the person who really crystallised it for me, it was just before the referendum, I was just talking to Leslie Riddick, and she said to me, do you think there's any chance that we've rather marched them halfway up the hill? And I said, we absolutely marched them halfway up the hill. We told the people of Scotland it can be better. We told them we need more powers to do all of it, but we can't say that we don't need more powers to do some of it. And we need to do that now. We need to march all the way up to the top of this hill. We have to say, if we said we wanted a better, more equal society, we wanted a society where small indigenous industries can build and grow and can really do these things, we need to be more radical. We need to think about what it is that we can do that's different from Westminster that makes this work. And that's why among the key things that we are doing is in the new year we'll be announcing our policy unit. Miriam works with the policy unit. She'll tell you a little bit in particular about why we want to make that a participatory unit. I would love it if people, ordinary people, get up in the morning. This is why in common space, I keep doing this, you'll need to wait till you see it. I'm imagining it on an iPad, it all swipes, it's beautiful. But you've got these carousels and you can do your news, and right below the news carousel you can do commentary, and right below that you can do policy. And we want to get people reading what's happening in policy, what's being discussed, what's being put out in the charity sector, the voluntary sector, the academic sector, the think tank sector. Get people really talking about policy and getting involved in it. And it's one of the things that was so exciting about the campaign was, like I say, I've said this before, walking out Hamilton Miners Welfare, and a retired labourer come up to me and says, what do you think Scotland's 10-year bonds yield position will be? What? I mean, genuinely, I've got an answer because we did some work on this, but most of the political journalists in Scotland don't ask questions like that. They phone me up and say, who doesn't like who? So we had this incredibly informed movement, and I wanted to keep going. I want people to really get involved in policy. I'm going to just give 2 quick examples of how it is that we can be every bit as radical with what we've got as we could have been if we had the full powers. We can have a revolutionary new banking system in Scotland. So revolutionary it looks exactly the same as the banking system in Germany and Japan. But what it is we can have every local authority in Scotland can set up a mutual local retail bank now, safe. Just takes your money in, gives you a credit card, a debit card, a loan if you need it, a mortgage if you need it, and leaves you the hell alone the rest of the year. Never once phones you up and says, would you like a customer service review? No, I wouldn't. Why are you phoning me? You're a bank. We could have a real, solid, proper, mutually owned banking system in Scotland now, where you could pay your money in and get it back out from any local authority premises anywhere in the country, and to make a stable, strong banking system that works for us. And housing, I think it's going to be key. Mitigating the effects, I'm going to say one thing, which is there's just nothing about this that doesn't pay me. I was talking to another miners' welfare in Pennycook, and it was a great discussion. It was an afterwards, where do we go now? And a guy stood up and had all these wonderful discussions. A guy stood up and says, yeah, but I'm elderly. My disability payments have just been removed. I'm cold and I'm hungry, and I've been considering suicide. What do we do now? And that clarified matters for me again, because this is not a campaigning matter. This is about the country that you live in now. And I know a lot of you have been around a lot of the working class areas where meetings were heavily attended, and heard a lot about what went on there. And if that hasn't rubbed off on you and permanently made you committed to not accepting it, then I don't know what you have to do, because it was really, really a focal point. I'm talking with somebody who said they'd never been involved, talking with on the platform someone who said, never been involved in politics before, didn't think it was irrelevant to me. And my dad died while he was appealing an ATOS ruling, and I realised politics did mean something to me. And that focused my head, once again, this is not theoretical. We're going to have to deal with the most awful assault on the poor, probably in Europe. We've got a Westminster election in which you've got 2 options. You can vote to cut the benefits of the most vulnerable by 1%, or you can vote to cut the benefits of the most vulnerable by 2%. Hallelujah for British democracy, if that's the choice that we're left with. The guy in Pennycook Miners' Welfare, there's 2 messages. One is, it's going to be hard. Dealing with the volume of the impact of austerity in Scotland without proper powers over welfare is going to be very difficult. It is, but not impossible. We can look at a number of areas. Housing is key. If we can create cheaper, better, more insulated housing with better heating, then we can take a lot of the effects of austerity away. We can do the same if we can think about food policy. How can we make access to food easier? More affordable, higher quality. If we can look at what are the things that people in austerity are suffering from, cold and hunger, if we can address those, then we can do something. And I want to say, no more UK housing model. When we say that we need many, many new houses built in this country, it does not mean that we need to relax planning and allow another private developer to knock up another field of noddy boxes. What we need is a proper national programme of investment in other public sector. And for me, the real revolution will be that this high quality housing will be something that young professionals want to live in, and not just people who are suffering from benefit cuts, and that they will live next to each other in communities and societies again, because housing is no longer an issue which separates the rich and the poor into not only different social classes but entirely different parts of cities. Let's get cities, let's get this back together. We can do this with the National Investment Bank properly capitalised. We can do it in the collective public sector with mortgage style borrowing over a long period of time. We can build the houses that people deserve. If we do these things, and a whole bunch of others that we're working on, if we do these things, see by 2020 Scotland's going to say, oh my God, what did we do? If this is the commitment that that referendum stimulated in the political classes, or some of them, in Scotland to make a better country, what could we have done with the energy that would have been unleashed if we voted yes? And I really believe that if we act as if we're independent and no longer simply moderating or tweaking the nature of British capitalism and British political system in Scotland, but we start off like we intended to go ahead anyway and create a different system and a different model. If we do that by 2020, all we have to do is call a referendum. We won't even need to campaign, because the other side is going to be so discredited with what has happened in Britain. People are going to start to say, actually, what people do in the rest of the world, what they do in the Germanys and the Japans and the Nordic countries, and things all over the globe which are better than what we do, yes, that's the way forward. So one of the key things that we want to do is to make sure that by the spring conference we come back here and we're starting to put out in front of you things that we can do, policies and practical actions that we can take, and that by the summer we have a really solid set of proposals, so that when you're here this time next year thinking about the manifestos for your party and what they're going to be for the years between 2016 and 2020, there is material on the table of a high quality that gives you the option to consider a really independently minded future for Scotland. And we're not going to do it alone. We're going to have, as Miriam's going to talk about, we're going to have networks of people, professional academics and practitioners, but also networks of people who are just interested and want to feed into this policy and see, we want to stay at the start of the new year when we're launched, right, what now, what do we do? It's not about throwing stones at each other anymore, it's about building a proper proposals for transforming Scotland into the country it wants to be. Scotland didn't vote no, it voted not yet. No, I'm not going to be that long. People didn't vote no, they voted not yet. So the next time round, when we give them the choice to vote, they want to look at where they are and say, yes, this is what we wanted and more of it. Common Weal's only part of that, but we are going to work. We're a team of 13 people now. We've got 13 people employed full time. I should, of course, make a pitch for funding, but we'll wait till you see the news service and then you'll just give us it anyway. We've got 13 people employed full time on the basis of lots of people who are giving us £5 a month. Anyone who isn't and feels like they'd like to, please do. And now I'm going to hand you over and let Angela and Miriam tell you about the content of what we're actually doing and why it's all worthwhile. Thanks.